At Helmsworth University, where wealth walks in designer shoes and names open doors, Ezra is a quiet scholarship student just trying to survive the nose, working part-time jobs, cleaning up after people who barely notice him. He never imagined his life would cross paths with Adrian Vale, the golden boy of the campus whose last name built half the school. What started as mockery soon turned into something neither of them could name. A collision of pride, pain, and unspoken understanding. Behind closed doors of the Vale mansion, truths begin to unravel. Watch out for this amazing story. And don't forget to subscribe to Sweet Serenity BL for more heartfelt stories. I've learned that silence is louder than words when you're poor. It fills every space people leave empty. In the cafeteria, when you can't afford lunch. In class, when you can't join conversations about summer trips. And in your chest when everyone laughs at a joke that's about you. That silence followed me to Helmsworth University, the school of sons and daughters of people whose last names opened doors before their first names were even spoken. I didn't belong there, but my scholarship said otherwise. My grades were my ticket. Poverty was the price. Every morning, I walked past cars that cost more than my mother's entire life savings. I carried a backpack that had been patched 3 times, while others tossed theirs aside like crops. But I told myself it was fine. I wasn't here to belong. I was here to become. Then there was Adrian Vale. You couldn't walk 10 steps on campus without hearing his name. His father owned Vale International, the same conglomerate that funded half the school's fancy student innovation programs. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and effortlessly confident, the kind of person who could insult you and make everyone laugh while doing it. And for some reason, I became his favorite target. The first time it happened, I was cleaning tables at the campus cafe after my evening shift. Adrien walked in with his friends, their laughter echoing like glass against my ears. He ordered something ridiculous, a caramel latte with imported cream. And, when he noticed me behind the counter, his lips curved into a smirk. Didn't know the scholarship came with a job description, he said loud enough for the whole cafe to hear. His friends laughed, my hands trembled, but I forced a smile. Everyone works for something, Vale. Some of us just have to work harder. He tilted his head, amused. Is that supposed to be noble? No. I said quietly, it's supposed to be true. That night, I walked home with my pride barely intact. I told myself it didn't matter. People like him didn't understand people like me. But Adrien had this habit of showing up wherever I worked. Sometimes, it was by accident. Other times, I wasn't so sure. At the library, he'd ask me to fetch books from the top shelves, books he never read. At the cafe, he'd spill drinks so I'd have to clean up. He was relentless, and every time I thought I was getting used to it, he found a new way to humiliate me. But one evening, something shifted. I was working late at the cafe again, rain tapping softly against the windows, when he walked in, alone this time. His usual cocky energy was gone, replaced by something quieter, heavier. He didn't order anything, he just sat there, watching me. Hi. I tried to ignore him, but after a while, he called out, Ezra. I froze. He'd never said my name before. Not like that. I need to talk to you, he said. His voice was calm, almost uncertain. I hesitated, then walked over, towel still in hand. What do you want, Vale? He looked up at me, eyes unreadable. A job offer. I blinked. A what? You're wasting your time wiping tables for scraps. I could pay you 20 times that amount to work for me instead. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it sounded insane. You want me to work for you? Doing what? Taking your insults home too? He didn't flinch, as my personal assistant. Or, he paused, his gaze flickering. Maid, if that's what you'd prefer to call it. I almost dropped the towel. You're kidding. I'm not, he said, leaning back casually. My family's hosting a series of private events soon. I need someone discreet, disciplined, and his eyes drifted over me, assessing, humble enough to handle it. I should have said no. I wanted to say no, but I thought about my mother's medication, my little sister's school fees, the overdue rent. The offer could solve everything for months, so instead, I asked, why me? He smiled faintly, because you don't quit. And maybe. His voice dropped lower. I like watching how far you'll go. Something about that sentence made my chest tighten. Not in anger this time, but confusion. There was something unreadable in his eyes, a flicker of something that wasn't cruelty. When Ashley walked home in the rain, I couldn't stop hearing his words, 20 times more. That night, I stood by my small window, watching the city lights blur through raindrops. The offer echoed in my head, mixing with memories of every insult he'd thrown my way. Was this another game, another trick, or was this the twist I didn't see coming? The one that would change everything. I didn't know then that saying yes to Adrian Vale would be the start of the most complicated chapter of my life. The part where hate learned how to speak softly, and pride began to tremble for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. When I arrived at the Vale estate, I understood for the first time what real wealth looked like. It wasn't just the tall iron gates that opened without a sound, or the endless driveway lined with manicured trees. It was the silence, the kind of silence money could buy. Adrian's world didn't hum like mine did. It didn't struggle, it didn't hurry, it waited. Even the air felt expensive. A butler greeted me at the door, his face polite but unreadable. "You must be Mr. Ezra. Master Adrien has been expecting you." Master Adrien. The words alone made me want to laugh. Inside, the house was everything I wasn't. Cold marble floors, glass staircases, and a chandelier that looked like frozen rain. The kind of place you couldn't breathe too loudly in. Adrien was waiting in the living room, lounging on a sofa, in a gray shirt that looked effortless, but probably cost more than my semester's tuition. When he saw me, a small smirk tugged at his lips. "You're early," he said. "I'm always early," I replied. He tilted his head. "I see that. Let's get one thing clear. While you're here, you'll do what I ask, when I ask it. You'll have access to the guest quarters on the West Wing. Meals are provided. I expect discretion and respect." His tone was all business, but his eyes lingered on me for a beat longer than necessary. I couldn't tell if he was measuring me or testing me, maybe both. "I understand," I said quietly. "Good." He stood up, slipping his hands into his pockets. "Then let's begin." The first few days were strange. I wasn't sure what I'd expected. Maybe constant orders or humiliating tasks. But Adrien mostly ignored me. My job was to clean, organize his schedule, make sure meals were prepared, and run small errands. The house was enormous, but what struck me most wasn't its size, it was the emptiness. There were no family photos, no laughter echoing through the halls, no one else living there except a few silent staff members who rarely spoke. Sometimes, I'd catch Adrien standing by the massive window in his study, staring out at nothing for minutes at a time. He always looked lonely. One night, I walked past the study and heard music, a soft piano melody. I peeked inside and froze. Adrien was sitting at the grand piano, playing something haunting and beautiful. His head was slightly bowed, his fingers moving like he was trying to remember a memory he'd lost. When he noticed me, he stopped abruptly. "Do you make a habit of spying, Ezra?" he asked without looking up. "I wasn't spying," I said quickly. "I just didn't know you played." He looked at me then, eyes cold but tired. "There's a lot you don't know about me." I wanted to leave, but curiosity kept my feet rooted. "Then why do you act like—" I paused, unsure if I should finish the sentence. "Like a jerk," he said, smirking faintly. I swallowed hard. I wasn't going to say it like that, but you thought it. He stood up and walked toward me, each step deliberate. When he stopped in front of me, I could smell faint traces of his cologne. Sharp, clean, expensive. "You think I hate you, don't you?" he said quietly. I didn't answer. He leaned closer, voice slower now. "Maybe I don't hate you, Ezra. Maybe I just hate how you remind me of something I can't be." Before I could ask what he meant, he brushed past me and left the room, the sound of his footsteps fading into silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words replayed in my head, twisting into questions I couldn't answer. What did he mean? What couldn't he be? The next morning, I woke up early to prepare breakfast. When I walked into the kitchen, I found him already there, sleeves rolled up, flipping through a business magazine. "Coffee?" he asked, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I blinked. "You're asking me?" "Just take it," he said, handing me a steaming cup. "You look like you could use it." There it was again. The inconsistency. The beau who mocked me at school was now offering me coffee like a friend. Later that day, while cleaning his study, I found a photo hidden behind a stack of books. It was a picture of a younger Adrien, maybe 15, sitting beside another beau who looked eerily familiar. They both had shy smiles, their hands brushing slightly in the picture. Before I could take a closer look, Adrien walked in. "Put that down," he said sharply. His voice sliced through the air. And for the first time, I saw something like fear in his expression. "I wasn't going to. Just leave it," he said again. Softer this time, but his jaw was tight. I did as he said, but my mind was spinning. The boy in that picture. I'd seen him before. Not in person, but in one of the old school photos in the university archives. He was a student who transferred suddenly years ago, right before whispers of a scandal spread through the school. I didn't know what it meant yet, but something told me Adrian Vale's arrogance wasn't just arrogance, it was armor. And maybe, just maybe, I was starting to see the cracks in it. That night, when I walked past his study again, I heard the piano playing the same sad tune as before. But this time, I didn't peek in. I just stood outside the door, listening, because for the first time, I didn't hear a rich boy mocking the world. I heard a boy trying to remember how to feel human again. It's strange how quickly routines can start to feel like safety. 2 weeks into my job at the Vale estate, I memorized the sound of the house breathing, the low hum of the air conditioning, the distant ticking of the antique clock in the hall, and Adrian's footsteps echoing faintly whenever he left his study. I had also learned that silence here meant more than wealth. It meant secrets. I tried not to think about the photograph I'd found. The one with the younger Adrien and that boy whose face I couldn't forget. But every time I looked at him now, I saw a question hanging between us. Who was that boy? And why did the picture scare him so much? Adrien had been different since that day. He no longer barked orders or threw insults. Instead, he'd ask small questions about my family, my studies, my childhood. The first time he asked if I missed home, I almost laughed. "Home doesn't miss me back," I'd said. He'd gone quiet after that. One evening, he invited me to join him for dinner, something that wasn't part of my job. I almost refused, but the way he asked made it sound less like a demand and more like a confession he didn't know how to give. We ate in silence for a while. The dining table was so long it felt like a bridge between two worlds. "Do you ever wonder why I offered you this job?" he asked suddenly, his voice breaking the stillness. I looked up. All the time, he smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Maybe I wanted to see how long it would take before you stopped pretending not to hate me." "I don't hate you," I said. "I just don't understand you." "Good," he whispered, almost to himself. "Maybe that's why you're still here." Later that night, I couldn't sleep again. The air in the house felt heavier. I found myself wandering down the hall, drawn by the faint glow under the study door. I pushed it open slightly. Adrien was there, sitting on the floor beside the same piano, staring at the photo I'd found days ago. He didn't notice me at first. His hand hovered over the picture like he was afraid to touch it. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red, not from anger, but from something far more fragile. "I told you not to look at it," he said softly. "I didn't. I lie." He gave a small, bitter smile. "You did. I would have looked too." I stepped closer, careful, unsure if I was crossing some invisible line. "Who is he?" Adrien hesitated, then sighed. "He was my best friend. We were in high school together. He left after something happened, something my father made sure nobody ever talked about again." "Something?" I asked. He laughed quietly, but it wasn't humor. It was pain. "My father caught us holding hands." The silence that followed could have shattered glass. I didn't know what to say. The weight of those words, "caught us holding hands," carried more than the act itself. It carried fear, shame, power. "He made him disappear," Adrien continued, voice low. "His family moved overnight. He never came back. And I learned what happens when I let people see the real me." He looked at me then, eyes raw and searching. "That's why I pick fights, Ezra. That's why I laugh first, before they can laugh at me. Because it's safer to be cruel than to be seen." My chest ached. For the first time, I saw Adrien not as the golden boy who mocked me, but as someone still bleeding behind his perfect smile. Without thinking, I sat beside him on the floor. The marble was cold against my legs, but the space between us felt warm, fragile, almost electric. "You don't have to keep fighting everyone," I said quietly. He looked down, his expression unreadable. "You don't know what it's like to hide who you are." "I do," I said softly, "just not for the same reasons." He turned to me, and something unspoken passed between us, something that didn't need words. We sat there for a long time, two broken woes from different worlds sharing the same silence. Then he reached for the piano keys and began to play again, this time slower, gentler. The notes filled the air like a heartbeat trying to find rhythm again. "Play something," he said suddenly. I laughed nervously. "I don't know how." "Then listen," he said. "Just listen." So I did. I closed my eyes and let the music sink into the spaces between us. At some point, I felt his hand brush against mine. A simple, accidental touch, but it set my skin on fire. Neither of us pulled away. When the last note faded, the only sound left was our breathing. "Ezra," he whispered, and for the first time, my name sounded like something soft, something precious. I opened my eyes and saw him looking at me like I was something he didn't deserve but couldn't stop reaching for. Before I could speak, he stood up abruptly and walked out, leaving me with the echo of his footsteps and a heart that wouldn't slow down. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the look in his eyes. Not the sadness, but the fear of wanting something he thought he couldn't have. And I realized I was starting to want it too. It's strange how quickly life can shift. One moment, everything feels steady. The next, it feels like the ground beneath your feet has disappeared. It happened on a Thursday morning. The day started like any other. Sunlight spilling through the tall windows, the house quiet except for the hum of the fountain outside. I was preparing the day's schedule in the study, and I heard raised voices in the next room. Adrian's father had returned. I'd only seen him once before, at a distance, surrounded by men in suits. He was tall, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who spoke softly but carried storms in his silence. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the argument was impossible to ignore. "You think you can run a company like this?" His father's voice thundered, playing house with a servant boy. My heart stilled. Adrian's voice was calm, but there was a tremor beneath it. "He's not a servant, he works for me because I asked him to." "You're embarrassing this family," his father barked. "Your weakness is costing you respect. That boy has no place here." For a moment, silence stretched, then Adrien said something that froze me completely. "Then maybe I don't want a place here either." There was a crash, glass, maybe, then the heavy sound of footsteps leaving. The next thing I knew, Adrien stormed out of the room, his expression pale but determined. When he saw me standing by the doorway, his jaw tightened. "You heard all that, didn't you?" I nodded quietly. "Then you know what's coming next," he said, voice shaking. "My father will have you dismissed by morning." I stepped closer. "Then let me leave now." "No," he said quickly. "You don't run from people who try to break you, you face them." For the first time, I saw it. The fire that made people follow Adrien, not arrogance, strength. "I'll talk to him," I said. He stared at me like I'd just said something impossible. "Ezra, he's not the kind of man you can reason with." "Maybe not," I said softly, "but I'm not the kind of person who hides either." When I entered the living room, his father was standing by the window, his back turned. He didn't acknowledge me at first. "So you're the boy," he said finally, "the scholarship charity case." "I'm Ezra," I replied evenly. He turned, eyes cold. "You're leaving this house today." "I understand, sir," I said, "but before I do, I want you to know something. Your son isn't weak, he's human. He's strong enough to stand on his own, and kind enough to care when others wouldn't. That's not a flaw, it's character." For a moment, he said nothing, just stared at me like he was trying to understand why I wasn't afraid. Then, with a dismissive gesture, he turned away. "You've said enough." I bowed slightly and left. That night, I packed my things quietly. Adrien didn't try to stop me, though I knew he wanted to. The silence between us said everything. "I guess this is goodbye," I said at the doorway. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "For now." His voice was calm, but his eyes held something else, something that wasn't defeat. "Ezra," he said suddenly, just as I was stepping out. "You once asked why I offered you the job." I turned back. "It wasn't pity," he said. "It was because you reminded me that not everything has a price. Some people still work for something real." I didn't know how to respond, so I just smiled, the kind of smile you give when words aren't enough. And then I left. Months passed. I moved into a small apartment near campus, finished my exams, and started tutoring first-year students. Life returned to its quiet rhythm, but something inside me had changed. One afternoon, I got an email, a single line from an unfamiliar address. "You were right. I stopped hiding. Thank you. AV." I stared at the message for a long time, no explanations, no grand gestures. Just those words, and they were enough, because that was what our story had always been about. Not wealth or class, not power or pride. but to people learning that strength isn't found in the things we own, but in the courage to stand, to forgive, and to begin again. And maybe, in some quiet corner of the world, Adrien was finally learning to live without armor. As for me, I'd learned that sometimes life doesn't pay you in money, or luxury, or fame, but in lessons that are worth 20 times more.